The Gemara tells us that Misha Nichlas Adar Marbin B'Simcha, when the month of Adar begins, every Jew should increase his levels of joy, because it's a month which is destined for only good things for Jews. Because in the zodiac, the month of Adar, and the Talmud gives an example that if a person has a court case with a non-Jew, and you're able to postpone the case for the month of Adar, that's the month to go to trial with that person. Why? Because you have the best chance of coming out on top, to be vindicated or to win the case, because the mazel of the Jew is strongest during the month of Adar. It's something which is very powerful for the Jew. So when the month of Adar begins, you should increase your joy. Now, historically, what happened during Adar? A number of things happened during Adar. Moshe was born during the month of Adar. Moshe was born on the 7th day of Adar. Haman, as we mentioned, the holiday is called Purim, because the word pur means a lot. He drew lots. He was given and authorized by the Persian king, the emperor, to annihilate every man, woman, and child. And the lot fell out during the month of Adar. And because of that, he was ecstatic, because he believed that he would succeed in the final solution. Why? Because it's the month that Moshe, who's the Jewish people's only connection to God, died during the month of Adar. So there's no more tragic month than the month of Adar for the Jewish people. Therefore, he was ecstatic. Here, he paid 10,000 talents of silver to buy the fate of the Jews and to actually decree that every man, woman, and child should be annihilated. There shouldn't be a solitary Jew on the face of the earth. But little did he know that Moshe passed away on the day that he was born. Therefore, what is the value of the Jewish people? What is the value of existence? Why were the Jewish people created? Why was the world created? God created the world with an objective, and it's alluded to in the first verse in the Torah. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. In the beginning, God created, but the word Bereshis, as it's written, it alludes that for the sake of Bereshis, for the sake of the choicest, there's nothing more valuable or invaluable than the Torah itself. And the only people who have relevance to that Torah are only the Jewish people, as it was proven at Sinai that God offered the Torah to every nation in the world, and every one of them rejected it. The only nation which embraced it, which we'll discuss, were the Jewish people. We said Nasa v'nishma. We accepted it unequivocally. So the objective of creation was what? Was the Torah. And the people who have relevance to that are only the Jewish people. The dimension of the spirituality of the Jew reflects the spirituality of what's innately in the Torah. Why? Because the Jewish people are the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the patriarchs. And they were able to create within themselves the most expansive level of depth-wise, breadth-wise, of spirituality, which there was nothing comparable to in the history of existence. And they are the only ones that God chose to be his location, which was the equivalent of the Holy of Holies. As it says in Chazal, Hein Hein Merkava, they were the chariot of God. As the top of the ark in the Holy of Holies, which was a slab of gold with cherubs, as God spoke to Moshe between the cherubs, God's location was where the holy patriarchs were. We being their descendants, we reflect their spirituality. Our souls are multidimensional as theirs was, and therefore we have relevance to the 613 commandments. Because only when we fully address every one of those commandments are we able to fully cleave to God, to become part of God's system. Moshe was the conduit to be able to bring that about. Moshe was the only Jew who was qualified to be that conduit, to be that connection to God, that God should transmit his holy word to the Jewish people. Therefore, what gave value to existence? When Moshe was born, as it says, it's alluded to in the Torah, the home of his parents was illuminated with light. Why was it illuminated with light? He was holy. Moshe Rabbeinu radiated holiness, as we read later. When he spoke to the Jewish people, when he wasn't communicating Torah, he would wear a mask. The radiance was so intense, they didn't have the capacity to be able to tolerate the intensity of that holiness. So he had to cover his face. What happened at Sinai? When we became God's people, we were reinstated to the status of Adam pre-sin, as is based on a verse in Yechezkel, Atem kuri modem, hem lo kuri modem. The Jewish people are classified as Odom. What Adam was before he ate of the sin of knowledge. He had a potential to expand and advance his soul. The moment he ate of the tree of knowledge, he ingested that evil, forever he had forfeited that capacity. The Jewish people at Sinai, because we are the descendants of the Avos HaKadoshim, the only patriarchs, we reinstated to have that capacity to be able to advance our spirituality, because we have a different dimension soul, only because of that. Moshe Rabbeinu was the only one who was able to facilitate the Torah, to be the conduit for that Torah, for the Jews to be able to develop and advance. So the month of Adar is the month that the human being who is going to be the conduit to bring about the objective of creation was born during that month. You know what the value of that month is? It's like a person, L'havdil. During the month of Adar, he wins a $3 trillion lottery ticket that there's no need that he can't address with that amount of money. Forever, it'll be etched in everybody's minds. The month of Adar is the month that all humanity became addressed, and the needs were going to be met because of an event that took place during Adar. The event that took place during Adar was Moshe's birth. Now the world will have purpose, because Moshe was the only one qualified to receive the Torah on behalf of the Jewish people. Therefore, there's no greater value versus the Jewish people than the month of Adar. Haman Yimach Shmo v'Zichro. We bang when we say his name, because he personifies evil, and that's why he wanted to eradicate, annihilate every man, woman, and child. If Moshe died, that means his demise was then. That indicates it's the most tragic month. But the Talmud says, but he didn't realize he was born on the day that he died. He lived a full life. He achieved a level of perfection which nobody ever achieved such a level. A perfect life. Therefore, the month of Adar, there's no month like Adar. And therefore, the Mazel, the sign of the zodiac for the Jewish people, it's the healthiest sign. Because our value only assumed its value because of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's Moshe Rabbeinu. He's Moshe, our teacher. Torah tzivulonu Moshe, Morasha Kilas Yaakov. Every child, when he begins speaking, the first verse you teach him is, the Torah was commanded to us by Moshe Morashah, which is the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. That gave us value. We say Yisroel v'Oraisa v'Kuchadu, the words of the Zohar. Yisrael, the Jewish people, v'Oraisa, and the illuminator. The Torah in Aramaic is called Oraisa. V'Kuchabrichu, and the Holy One, Chadu. We're all intertwined. But what gave us the capacity to cleave and be intertwined with God? It's only the Torah itself. Because we said at Sinai, we said Nasav Nishma, because we accepted the Torah at Sinai. So let's understand. The way it's understood superficially, well, not so superficially, what happened during the month of Adar? We're going to read in the Megillah. There was a decree to annihilate every man, woman, and child. And at the last moment, and we were going over to extinction. And the last moment, there was a change of events. Haman was hanged, and the Jews were given permission on the 13th of Adar to kill the Amalekites throughout the world. So we were supposed to be annihilated on that day. Rather than them annihilating us, we annihilated them for a day. And we saved the day. And we celebrate that miracle on the 14th of Adar. Is when we read the Megillah and we celebrate, we feast. So seemingly, why are we feasting? We exist as a people. We're brink of extinction at the last moment. Not one Jew was killed. And not only were the Jews not killed, we were given permission by the emperor, who originally had given permission to Haman to annihilate the Jews. We were given permission to annihilate them at a limited level. From one day, in Shushan, which was the capital city, they were given 2 days. They had an additional day. They could kill the enemy. Okay? So seemingly, what are we feasting? We're feasting that we were saved by God. We're celebrating the miracle, which we are. But what is the core of what happened? We said, why is Adar special? Because Haman missed the point. He thought since he died in Adar, it's the most tragic month. But he didn't realize he was born during Adar. Therefore, it's the healthiest, spiritually speaking. Our whole value came because of that month. Let's talk about the Sinai event. What happened at Sinai? God offered the Torah to all nations of the world. The first question they asked, what's it all about? What's written in that Torah? My Kosovo. He says to the Edomites, it says, Lo tirtzach. It says in my 10 commandments, thou shalt not commit murder. He says, you know something? It doesn't fit our profile because we have a blessing from our forefather, Yitzchak. He gave the blessing to Esau, al charbecho tichya. We live by the sword. It doesn't conform with our lifestyle. If that's the case, we got to turn you down. Goes to the Ishmaelites, the Arabs. They ask, what does it say in your Torah? That's the first question. It says in our 10 commandments, lo tignov. Kidnapping is not permitted. It's a capital crime. We're sorry, we're involved in the human slave trade. We capture people, kidnap them, we sell them off as slaves. Doesn't conform with our lifestyle. And he went from nation to nation. Each one asked the same question, and each one turned God down. He goes to the Jewish people. They don't ask the question, what's it all about? They say to God, if you're offering it, we're taking it. Nasev Nishma, we're ready to do. Just tell us what to do. So not only did we accept it, but in the context of the way we accepted it was with total trust and faith in God. Regardless of the extent of that obligation, we're willing to accept full-heartedly. And when the Jews said, Nasev Nishma, what did God say? Migilo Rozel Bonai. Who revealed the secret to my children? They speak like angels. Because an angel, when he does the will of God, he doesn't have to hear the charge first. He's ready immediately He's waiting just for the order. It's not something Nishma. The Jews at Sinai assumed the characteristic of an angel, the level of submission and negation to God's will. Not something Nishma. We will do when we listen. Just tell us what to do. And therefore, we ascended to a level of Atem Kurim Adam. Now we've met the objective of creation. Adam, only the Adam, as the Maral says, the word Adam, that appellation comes from the word Adama. What is earth? You can have virgin soil. You leave it fallow, it has no value. But if you take advantage of its potential, all life grows from that. And that's why Adam was called Adam, because he has the potential of growth, spiritual growth, and only nation in existence who has relevance to spiritual growth are only the Jewish people. Because of the nature of our soul, that our soul can advance itself. And the Jew, the Talmud Gemara tells us, Gedolav tzadikim yosim malchei asharis. An angel is an angel, and within the spiritual capacity, it's finite. It's limited to what it was endowed with. A Jew has no limitation. We have free choice. And if you make enough of the right choices, you advance beyond what an angel is. Because an angel, his status is not attributed to himself. It's only because he was created as such. A tzaddik, nobody's won a tzaddik. It's only due to the initiatives and the challenges we meet throughout our life, therefore we become a tzaddik. So when did we enter into that new level of classification that was Sinai? That took place in Nisan. That took place in Sivan. That was 3 months after Pesach. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. That's the 3rd month. Adar is the 12th month. Moshe, the conduit to receive the Torah, was born in Adar. We should say Misha Nichnas Sivan Marbim B'Simcha. We became the Jewish people in Sivan. That's the month. It should be the luckiest month for the Jew. We became God's people, but yet it's not. Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. The month Moshe was born. But it's why that month? Seeming become the Jewish people. The Jews saying Nasav Nishma, where God says Megillah Roza Labonai, seeming that's far beyond what Adar is all about. So why is Adar that special month? So you say, well, because we were at the brink of extinction, and the last month we were saved. That's why it's special. So let's understand. The Gemara tells us that at Sinai, although we said Nasav and Nishma, what did God do? It says the Jews, when they received the Torah, we were under the mountain. What do you mean we were under the mountain? We were tachtas sahor. So the Gemara tells us, the Talmud tells us, that at Sinai, God picked up the mountain and put it over the heads of the Jewish people and said, if you accept the Torah, you will continue. If not, you will be buried under the mountain and you will revert back to pre-existence. Existence will cease to be. So what is it contingent upon? The world continuing? You have to accept my Torah. Interesting. So therefore, and the Talmud says over there, that there's a disclaimer every Jew has, and he could say, you know why we must perform? We have no choice. God put a mountain over our heads. It was under coercion. We became a Jewish people under coercion. So the obvious question is, which the commentators ask, and the Midrash ask, we already said Nasav Nishma. We already said we accept unequivocally. What did God have to put a mountain over our heads? And the many answers. So the commentator on the page answers, what we call Tosfos answers, that when they saw the fires at Sinai, which are the fires of spiritual hell, what we call Gehenna, they wanted to retract. They said, no, maybe we were too hasty. We were too quick on the draw, so to say. God says, no, something, once you're in forever. Puts them out. Either you continue or it ends. It comes to an end now. So the Jews themselves says, look, we're locked in, we can't get out. That's it. So, but still, is that the way to become a Jewish people? It's a deficient context. It's like a woman, lahavdil, God forbid, marries a man, and after she's married, she realizes 24 hours later, she made a mistake. Made a mistake. You know something, once you're in, you're stuck. Unless the husband's willing to release you, you're married. And it's not, there was any false impressions where he misled her. She fully understood it, rethought it. She says, I could have made a better choice. Doesn't make a difference. You're locked in. But is that the way to live a marriage? That you're locked in, you're forced to remain in a relationship? But Sinai, it came due to coercion. So although we served God and we continued being dedicated, but what was the history of that relationship? We were compelled because God gave us an ultimatum. Either you stay or it ends. That was the ultimatum. And we said, something, we're staying. We're going to make the best of it. That's what we said to God. But qualitatively, it's not the way to serve God. We're going to make the best of it. What happened on Purim? We read in the Megillah, which God said we're going to read tomorrow night and Thursday during the daytime. We read the Megillah twice on Purim. We read towards the end of the Megillah, Kimu v'kiblu. Kimu v'kiblu. What does the meaning of Kimu? They fulfilled and they accepted. First you accept, then you fulfill. So the Talmud tells us, the Gemara tells us, Kimu mashe kiblu kvar. There was a reaffirmation on Purim for what they already had accepted at Sinai. Sinai was under coercion. Purim was Kabbalah mi'avo. We accepted out of love. We were not compelled. Because of what happened on Purim, we're at the brink of extinction. And God, at the last moment, there was a change of events. Well, we were not annihilated, but we annihilated our enemies. It gave us an understanding of what we mean to God. That God will turn over the world endless times and will not leave a stone unturned on our behalf. When we experienced and internalized God's love, we said to God, let's replay the tape, as they used to say. We're going this full-heartedly. Out of love, we're embracing it. We don't need a mountain over our heads. So that reaffirmation of the receiving of Torah at Sinai brought us to another level. So what was Adar? Nisan was the initial receiving of the Torah. As we say on Shavuos, Zman Matan Torasenu, it's the time of the giving of our Torah. That's Sivan. But Adar, this was an advanced level. It was a new receiving of the Torah. It's a reaffirmation qualitatively. So we took on a new standard, a new standing in God's eyes. We were more beloved to God because what happened there. So two things happened. Moshe was born during the month of Adar. But the Jews didn't appreciate what Moshe communicated to them. He did not appreciate the selfless negation of Moshe with to God because Moshe understood beyond what the Jews understood on Purim, that God needs nothing. Whatever he does is only selflessly for us. It's due to his selfless goodness, his absolute goodness. The Jews only came to that level on Purim. Therefore, it was a kimu v'kiblu. So when we celebrate and we feast and we read the story of Purim, and Mordechai and Esther were the authors of this Megillah, they insert the reality. How did it end? Kimu v'kiblu. Reaffirmed. Initially, it was due to coercion. We had no choice because the alternative was death. Now, we're there, all the way there, selflessly dedicated, self-motivated. So why Misha Nichlas Adamar ben B'Simcha? It's because we were saved. As a result of the miracle of being saved, we all of a sudden we had a clarity. This month we had a clarity. Because the objective of creation was achieved at a level which surpassed Sinai. Therefore, to God, this month is the most special month. Therefore, the zodiac for the Jewish people, what is this month? You understand? You come before the judge. And you're the judge's only son. And the judge is beholden to you, to the defendant. Is there a chance that the defendants are going to lose the case? Impossible. Adar is the month we achieved the ultimate level of objective. Qualitatively, we became the Jewish people. We became B'nai B'chori Yisrael, the true firstborn dedicated to his father, to his spiritual father, Avinu Malkeinu, which never ever preceded this moment. That's what makes Adar special. We increase our joy because there's nothing God wouldn't do for us because of what took place during this month. We celebrate, we feast. We read the Megillah to recall the background, what brought us to that point. You know, there's an expression, a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. And sometimes we have to literally hit rock bottom to be at the point of extinction. God forbid, annihilation, total annihilation. And then all of a sudden God pulls the rabbit out of the hat. Voila. And they said, we didn't realize it. This is God. So the fear that we had, the terror we had, because Achashverosh ruled the world supreme, as it says in the Megillah. He ruled 127 provinces. There was nowhere the Jew could escape to. And every nation, every location had rabid anti-Semites. They were waiting to bring about that final solution. They had the knives sharpened, they had the axes and picks there. And all of a sudden, they were all incapacitated. They were stripped of every sense of power. And the Jews have the Roman emperor, the Persian emperor behind them, endorsing them. And a new decree came out, a new mandate. Now we can appreciate what the value of Adar is. So what is the value of Adar? It's not only we exist physically, it has special value because to God, this is the most special month of the year. Firstly, Moshe Rabbeinu was born during this month, who was the only one who initially was qualified to be the conduit to bring the Torah to the Jewish people. In addition, because of that, it wasn't qualitatively where it should have been. Ultimately, as God knows the future, this month will be the month that's going to bring it over the top. And that's the Kabbalah Mi'ava. That's the reaffirmation that we embraced, we accepted it out of love. The Maharal writes, the Maharal of Prague, that there's a Zohar, it's attributed to the Arizal, that it says, Purim is, Yom Kippur is Ki Purim. We know Yom Kippur is, whether it's the holiest day of the year, but it is nearly the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur. Day of Atonement, Day of Forgiveness. There's no more merciful day than the day of Yom Kippur. God closes the book and we're able to relieve ourselves of all the debt, all the baggage. So the Arizal writes, and it's also cited in the Zohar, Yom Kippurim, in Hebrew, the kaf means it has a semblance. Yom Kippur has a semblance of Purim. You got it? The holiest day, a day that we fast, the 5 areas of deprivation. We're immersed in prayer, in tshuva, repentance. The most solemn day of the year, the most serious day of the year, is a semblance of Purim. Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippur is a semblance of Purim. You feast, you eat, you drink, you become intoxicated, and all of a sudden, Yom Kippur is a semblance of what Purim is. Could we understand it? So the Maharal of Prague explains it this way. What is Yom Kippur all about? It's interesting. We speak about the sabbatical year, we speak about the Jubilee year. Yovel. If a person bought properties in Israel throughout the sabbatical years, what happens when the Jubilee year comes? A person bought a Canaanite slave in Israel, and the Jubilee year comes, the time of the temple. What happened? All properties reverted back to the original owners. All slaves, Canaanite slaves, which is a chattel of the master, reverts back to the original owners. Everything goes back to its origin. Do you know when this happens? On Yom Kippur. Could you imagine? Person, he has a Dun & Bradstreet rating, he's worth -0. All of a sudden Yom Kippur comes, and afterwards they read, guy's worth $500 million. Where did it come from? All that his assets that he sold off in the past 50 years, everything reverts back. The man's on top of the mountain again. You know, we're talking about material assets, possessions, everything comes back. Your slaves, the chattels come back. I mean, we couldn't find a more appropriate day for this. We're talking about people who are immersed in tshuva, repentance, remorse, commitment to the future, serving God. Our minds are totally preoccupied with spirituality. Also, we're talking about real estate holdings and assets. Seems to be totally not in sync with what the day is all about. But only on that day we have it. How do we understand it? So I think the way to understand it's this way. You know what it means to own a property for 49 years? And you have capital improvements. Your children were born there. Your grandchildren were born there. Humanly, as much as I know that ultimately has to go back, it's not so easy to relinquish it, to release it. You have an emotional tie to that property. You put your sweat and blood. You invested in that property. You have memories of that property. The home you've lived in all these years. The moment Yom Kippur comes, all of a sudden, boomerang, goes right back to where it came from. It's only because on Yom Kippur we come to a level of realization and clarity, because we're so detached and we see that the material doesn't have any innate value. The material is only to facilitate the spiritual. And we come to that, so giving up the material doesn't mean anything, because the only value of the material is the spiritual. That's why God only chose that day that was so spiritually attuned, because there's no other day that we're able to internalize the reality of what it means to give that all up. It's a day of clarity. Because we've removed ourselves through 26 hours, fasting, deprivations, not to bathe, not to anoint ourselves, not to wear leather shoes, not to be engaged in procreation. Therefore, we've become semi-angels. An angel doesn't value material. The material is only whatever the value is to facilitate something else. That's the reason why. So what is Yom Kippur? We've come to a level of clarity due to the way the day was invested. Purim. There was no moment of clarity as that moment when it was an Apachu. When God turned the tables on the Amalekites, on the enemies of the Jews, and now the Jews became revered and admired. And as we read, the Gentiles wanted to convert to Judaism. That was the badge of honor. It's unbelievable. We thought we were in the doghouse, or even worse than that. And in a moment, we're launched beyond. We glow, we radiate. We came to an understanding of what we mean to God and who we are and what the value is. That everything's our relationship. That moment of clarity, there's nothing compared to that level of clarity. As much as we experience something spiritual, it's really abstract because factually we're physical beings. But something we experience as a physical being, it's a different level of internalization. And because of that, it's a different dimension of clarity. So therefore, Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippur is a semblance of Purim. It has a semblance, it's similar to Purim. And because of that, internalization of that reality, there was a reaffirmation of the receiving of Torah. Now we see its value. We embrace it out of love. It's no longer under coercion. It's a different dimension of relationship with different levels of service of God. That's what Purim is. So of course we feast to celebrate that we exist as a people. And that's due to God's love for us. But what kind of eye-opener was it? Understanding who we are and who they are. And why we were given the Torah and the Torah was not given to the nations of the world. Because they don't have the capacity to appreciate its value. But we, who are the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, being the descendants of the patriarchs, we're multi-dimensional. We're greater than the angels. Therefore, God gave it to us. And we saw it. It's forced upon us. But rather, it's the ultimate. I don't like to quote non-Jewish sources. But, one thing, Mark Twain once said something. As he gets older, his father becomes wiser. It's the same thing. Lahavdil, Elef Havdolos. At Sinai, we were just at the beginning. We were at our childhood at that moment. 49 days later, the 50th day out of Egypt, we're on this pedestal. It's like Lahavdil. I never skied in my life. I have no interest in going skiing. Somebody takes me to Vail, Colorado, or Jackson Hole, Wyoming, all these skiing places where people, they'll pay anything to be there, especially with certain kinds of people. I have no interest. Could you imagine they put me on top of this ski slope and say, now we'll put skis on you, you're going down this mountain. I said, something? I'm not interested in the skis. I'm not interested in the slope. I'm not interested in anything. They said, something, we're going to push you down the mountain. And you're on your own. At Sinai, God put us on a pedestal, and he says, now you're on your own. 50 days ago, we were slaves. We had no understanding what this is all about. You put us on top of the mountain. Now you're pushing us down the mountain. Are we going to survive it? God says, you have no choice. You must accept it. Otherwise, you're going to be buried under the mountain. Only later, after being well-weathered through many experiences, and now we reach the brink of extinction. And God says, now you've gone through enough to appreciate what it means, what I am, and what you think I am, and was, it's something totally different. Kabbalah mi'avo. It was a new level of embracement. Qualitatively, it was something else. Therefore, Adar, this is the true objective of existence. The Rambam writes, Rambam has a commentary on the Mishnah, that we say this. Rabbi Hanani ben Akasha Omer. Rabbi Hanani ben Akasha says, it's a Mishnah at the end of Tractate Makos. God wanted to bring merit to the Jewish people. Therefore, he gave us an abundance of Torah mitzvos. We have 630 mitzvos, 365 negative, 248 positive. So Rambam asks a question. That's quite a menu to deal with. Don't you think if God would have given us less mitzvos, it would be easy to contend with it, to succeed and not fail? By God giving us endless obligation, 248 positive and 3 negative, there's a greater likelihood we're going to fail. It's nearly impossible to succeed across the board. So Rambam says a principle. And he says The reason why God gave us this array of obligation, positive, negative, because even if you fail, but if you succeed one time in a lifetime, once, and do a mitzvah perfectly, then you've succeeded, regardless of all your failings. The key is to achieve once in a lifetime, to do something once on a perfect level. So therefore, God gave us endless opportunities. You've been here before, try it again. You don't like this, try something else. You may reject, you may fail, doesn't make a difference. But if you achieve one moment, once in a lifetime, that moment of perfection, you've scored and you're over the top. Kabbalah mi'avo. That's perfection. That's the ultimate. And because that's the ultimate, Adar has greater value than Sivan. The Talmud says, the Gemara says, why, if you have two Adars, why do we celebrate Purim in the second Adar, not the first? Because if it's not a leap year, which this year is a leap year, what precedes Nisan? Adar, as I mentioned, is the 12th month of the year. Nisan is the first month of the year. So you say Adar always precedes Nisan, but it always follows Shvat. The 11th month is Shvat. So if that's the case, why do we favor the second Adar over the first Adar? You know what the Gemara answers? Because we juxtapose Gula to Gula. Nisan is a month of redemption, and Adar was a month of redemption. So if it's a question of doing the first Adar, which is not adjacent, it doesn't abut Nisan, therefore it's not a better choice. The better choice is the second Adar. Adar is a month of Gula. We redeemed from life, we saved from death. And what happened in Nisan? It was Gula. It was the month of our freedom. That was the ultimate redemption. That's why we celebrated the second month, not the first month. But the way we're explaining it, what was the true Gula? Being saved was only the precursor to the level of clarity. The ultimate accomplishment was Kabbalah B'Ava. There's a beautiful word from the Dubna Magid that he was unmatched in being able to explain something with an allegory. The Magid of Dubna, he cites a medrash. That the medrash says that the covenant between the parts that Avraham Avinu says you'll be enslaved so many years, afflicted, and that nation will be judged, and you go out with great wealth. Great wealth. So what does it mean? As it says, that when the Jews left Egypt, nobody left with less than 10 pack ammos laden with gold and silver. Another text, 40 mules or donkeys. So that's the Rechush Godel, the great wealth. The Midrash says, you know what the great wealth was? That Hashem gave the Torah at Sinai. That was the ultimate wealth. So the Dubna Magid asks, it's explicit in the Torah that the great wealth was the material wealth, as we were told before we left, to borrow from our Egyptian neighbors or masters, gold and silver vessels. And the Midrash says, no, the great wealth was Sinai, when he gave us the Torah. So how do we reconcile from the text of the Torah? So he explains it with an allegory. This person has a teenage son who's not that studious, he's illiterate, but he's a burly guy, and he has a friend who has a farm, and he calls up his friend and says, my son has 3 months available. Could he work on your farm? He says, if he works, it's from dawn to dusk. He has to put in a full day. Tells his son, he says, son's ready. He puts in, doesn't miss a moment, works every day of those 3 months. At the end of the 3 months, because the employer was a friend of his father, he writes him a check, $10,000. Yeah. This boy looks at the check. He says, I just gave my life and blood for 3 months, didn't have a moment's rest. And the guy gives me a piece of paper with some scribble on it. So the kid goes, he's in the doghouse. He shows it to his father and he says, Dad, This man's your friend. He abused me. And he gives me a piece of paper with some scribble on it. What's this all about? So the father smiles and he understands what his son doesn't understand. So he calls him and says, do me a favor. Take a bag, put some silver shiny coins in it that jingle, and give my son, who'll be the happiest kid on the block. And that's what he does. Because the kid is illiterate. He doesn't understand what wealth is. There's a $10,000 check. When we left Egypt, where were we at? Did we have an appreciation for what the reality is, what the real is, what's real value? It's the pack mule laden with gold and silver. We think that's what life's all about. 50 days later, we ascended to another level of understanding. What's the real prize? The real prize is the Torah, to become God's chosen people. So that's literally we were that illiterate kid. Therefore, we were given the jingling coins. The donkeys were laden with gold and silver. 50 days later, it's a different reality. Now we say, Nasa v'nishma. We embrace it. You don't even have to tell us what it's about. We accept unequivocally. Therefore, the ultimate Rechush Gadol, the great wealth, is Sinai, but that was the precursor, because that we would only be satisfied at that infantile level of understanding. Just like to end with one thing. There's an argument in the Gemara. How does one celebrate holidays? And the two verses, one says the holiday should be dedicated for Hashem. Another verse says the holiday should be dedicated for yourselves. So there's an argument. Rebbe Lezer says you have a choice how you want to invest the day. You want to dedicate it totally to God, to study Torah, do mitzvahs, fine. You want to dedicate it fully for yourself to feast all day, that's also fine. Rabbi Yeshua says no. Chatzi lochem, chatzi loshem. You have to divide the day. Part of the day is for God, part of the day is for yourself to feast, to celebrate the holiday. We rule like Rabbi Yeshua. We divide the day. But the Gemara says, the Talmud says that even Rabbi Lezer agrees that 3 times a year where he concurs with Rabbi Yeshua, that you must feast. And you must celebrate physically, materially. What are the 3 days? Shabbos, Shavuos, the day that the Torah is given to the Jewish people, and Purim, because it says in the Megillah, it's days of Mishter v'Simcha, days of feasting and joy. So even he agrees you must feast. Now, why these days different than any other holiday? Where he says you have a choice, either fully invest in God or be fully invested in yourself. So the way I understand it is this. What is the greatest achievement in the person's life? We set milestones for ourselves. When you achieve a milestone, that's a moment to celebrate. But what's a milestone to a Jew? You achieve a level of perfection. Life is to perfect yourself, to advance and reach milestones. You meet one milestone, you go to another milestone. Okay? What is Sinai? When we said Nasiv Nishmat Sinai, we became God's people. We were reinstated to be Atem Kurim Odom. We became the totality of value of existence. That is perfection. We're given the Torah. Through the Torah, facilitates that perfection. Perfection, you celebrate. If a person buys a new home and it furnishes it and moves in, what does he do? He celebrates. It's called Chanukah Sabayis. He's celebrating. It's like the inauguration of the home. He invites his friends. He celebrates. Shabbos, it says, V'korasu Shabbos Oneg. One has Oneg Shabbos. What is the Chanukah Sabriya? What is the celebration of creation being completed? That's Shabbos. The world is completed, you celebrate. So the first level milestone was creation. Shabbos was the completion. But creation was contingent on the Jews accepting the Torah at Sinai. Until though everything was up in the air. Will it continue or not? When the Jews said at Sinai, Nasiv and Nishma, what did that do? That solidified that creation. Creation now is permanent. So that's an upgrade on the completion. That's a new milestone. Was until now was questionable. Now it's set on a permanent basis. But the question is, was it qualitative or quantitative? We said it was under coercion. So although it's a milestone, but it's not the ultimate milestone. What was the ultimate milestone? Purim was the ultimate milestone. Because what happened in Purim? Kimu v'kiblu. It was a reaffirmation out of love. Qualitatively, that was an upgrade. Therefore, again, how do we celebrate that upgrade of perfection? With now existence has a new level of value. You feast and you rejoice. That's the understanding. Just have a few moments. The Talmud says that a person is supposed to drink on Purim. So it literally means you become so intoxicated, you know the difference between blessed is Mordechai and cursed is someone. You know, in his drunken state, you say, cursed is Mordechai, God forbid, and blessed is someone. That's how out of touch he is with it. Mentally speaking, he's lost it. But there's another way to explain it. So there's a Maral of Prague explains why. Because the miracle of Purim was a physical miracle. Haman, the decree was to destroy our physicality, that we should not exist. So we celebrate it. It's not because what we understand that we exist as a physical people, but of course we're spiritual. Now, this is the way I understand it. When you say blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman, ask anybody, why is Haman, why should he be cursed? Why? You say because he's evil. He's a personification. He said, why is he evil? Why is Amalek evil? Why? Because he's the antithesis of God. So only because there's such a thing as good, that's why there's evil. The antithesis of good is evil. But if there wouldn't be such a thing as goodness, would there be evil? There's only one thread. It's called evil. But if you have a thread of goodness, evil doesn't exist. Why is good good? Because that's all that exists. But if you have an alternative and you're able to discern between good and evil, now you could now evaluate why good is good and evil is evil, understanding what each one represents. So what it means to say like this, a person has to drink to a point where you're able to introspect and reflect on what, when you say, Baruch Mordechai, you know what in essence you're saying? You're saying, Or Haman. Because if Mordechai truly represents the blessed, what does that mean? Anything that's contrary to that should be cursed. That's with introspection. That's with depth of understanding. And when you say cursed is Haman, in essence, what are you saying? Why should he curse it? You know why? Because Mordechai is blessed. So there's no difference between Baruch Mordechai or Haman. You have to drink to a level that you come and you are able not to be distracted, to be focused and be touched in a way to understand one is only one because there's something contrary to that, whether it's in the positive or the negative. And therefore, that's what we have to come to the understanding that because there is a good, there's God, and the Amalekites attacked us to try to undermine that, therefore they're evil because they are the antithesis of what God wants. Everybody should have a good Purim, enjoy it. And again, the mitzvahs, reading Megillah twice, the night and day. We give Mishloch Mas Ishlu Re'eu, and also we give Matos Levyonim, we give alms to the poor. Also, there's a custom tomorrow, we give Machzeh Shekel, which is given on Tainus Esther. Tomorrow's a fast day. Again, because it's Machzeh, because in Adar, they sent the Shkolim, and also the half a silver coin preempted the silver that was given by Haman to put the last nail in the Jew's coffin. Everybody be well, and we'll end here.